I want to spend some time on today's show running through the Browns pre-draft visit tracker to give you guys an idea of who could be at the top of the Browns big board going into the draft, which is 3 weeks away from today, actually, as we film this on Thursday. So let's just go back in time for a moment. And under Andrew Berry as the GM, look at the players that have come in for some level of a visit with the Browns in the pre-draft process that eventually were drafted by the Browns. So last year, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and DeJuan Jones. A bit of a gap after that, though. JOK and Greg Newsome in 2021, along with Demetric Felton. And then in 2020, Jed Wills and Curtis Weaver from Boise State. So there's a little bit of a track record of the Browns going after some of the guys they visit, but it's not something you have to look at as an absolute fact. Oh, they met with one of these players. That's going to be their first pick in the draft for sure. No, sometimes the guys they want to draft are drafted before them, and they've got a, audible on the spot. So with that being said, let's look at the Browns' top 30 pre-draft visits. These are private workouts, meetings in Cleveland. The Browns flying these guys in to take a look at them a little bit closer. And right off the bat, one position group or two jumps out to me, which is offensive and defensive line, right? Seeing a lot of offensive tackles and a lot of defensive tackles. We're also seeing some fun skill players like Malachi Corley and Joe Milton. But when you look at the breakdown of these 9 players that have visited, or 10 players that have visited with the Browns so far, I've got 3 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, 1 quarterback, 1 wide receiver, 1 cornerback. So we're definitely noticing a bit of a pattern for what Andrew Berry may be targeting and looking for in this draft. It's help in the trenches. It's offensive line and defensive line, because last year he learned how valuable it is to have good pieces on your offensive line to back up your starters, because unfortunately for him, he lost his top 3 offensive tackles. So he does not want to repeat that again in 2024. And on the defensive line, I just think there's a lot of short-term contracts, right? Shelby Harris, like the longest left on a 2-year deal. Dalvin Tomlinson's got 3 years left on his contract. Mo Hurst is on a 1-year deal. Quentin Jefferson's on a 1-year deal. So he probably wants to plant some seeds at that position and not just turn to free agency every single offseason to try and get some new run stoppers up front for him. Now, before we look at all those players the Browns brought in for a pre-draft visit and do a deep dive on some of my favorite, who should the Browns draft first? Wide receiver or a defensive tackle? This has been probably the most commonly picked position groups the Browns need help in going into the draft. So if you were calling the shots at pick 54 for Cleveland, which position do you think the Browns should target first? Now, of those 9 players the Browns brought in for a pre-draft visit, here are my top 3. We'll start off with the Western Kentucky wide receiver, Malachi Corley. And I'm guessing you guys are getting a little bit tired of me talking about the Yak Monster, but I think there's a lot of smoke around Malachi Corley to the Browns right now, and it makes a lot of sense for both ends, right? Could Corley fall to Cleveland at pick 54? Usually the non-Power 5 skilled players get overlooked every so often. So it wouldn't blow me away if a handful of teams decide Western Kentucky, one-trick pony, we'll go somewhere else. And the Browns decide this is actually perfect for us. And I like this pick potentially for 2 reasons, okay? Reason number 1 is when you look at Malachi Corley's body of work, he fulfills something the Browns really need help in, which is a yak player, yards after the catch. In fact, when you look at his yards after the catch last season, he had more yards after the catch than Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison, Adonai Mitchell. Like we're talking about the top 4 wide receivers arguably in this draft class, and Malachi Corley clears them all by a lot. And so that is something that really catches my attention, right? He's definitely got a skill set. He's got a niche. It's something that he is extremely well-versed in. And sure, he may not have more elements to his game, but that's actually okay with me because that one trick he does, the impossible guy to take down and the yards after catch machine he is, that's exactly what the Browns need in their wide receiver room, which brings me to my second reason why I like this pick a lot. Not only do I think Malachi Corley is a really good player, and I think he's got a really good chance of finding a successful career in the NFL, I think he fulfills something the Browns need in their wide receiver room. We've shared these stats before, but they don't really have a clear yak guy, right? I would love to find some play designs. I'm sure Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey would have a field day with this, of drawing up plays where Malachi Corley gets a wide receiver screen and takes 10 to 15 yards, right? Using him in the short intermediate areas and letting him do the rest. I think that would bring something new to this wide receiver room, and that's just one more weapon for Deshaun Watson to throw to, who, by the way, said today at the opening of his cheesesteak spot, Lefties, that he's going to be ready to roll for NFL Week 1. So I should probably mention that. But before we look at the other players I like a lot from the pre-draft visits, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help us reach 34,000 subscribers. We are 53 subs away, so if you're already subscribed, send it to a friend, cousin, a family member. Send it to someone you haven't talked to in a long time, and use this as a bridge to repair whatever relationship is fractured, thanks to the Cleveland Browns Report. That's what we do here, so hit the sub button down below. Next player on that list I like a lot is Texas defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat. He was the best true interior run stopper, I would say, last year in college football. If he wasn't the best, he was the second or third best. 45 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 31 pressures, and 4 pass breakups. And I'm going to tell you why I'm a big fan of this potential selection for Cleveland in just a moment. But first, I do want to share with you guys an awesome deal going on with our friends over at Game Time. When you download the Game Time app, you can get $20 off your first purchase for a Guardians game, a Cavs game, or any other local sporting event in your area when you use code CHATSPORTS. So we got Guardians opening day coming, brand new-ish, not quite, ballpark, renovated ballpark. Let's go with that. How about the new blue seats? That's what I'm trying to get here. And if you want to go catch one of the hottest teams in the AL early on, then download the Game Time app today and use code CHATSPORTS to get that $20 off discount. Or if it's another sporting event like the Cavs or anything else near you, a concert, a comedy show, anything your heart desires that sells tickets, use Game Time today, because they have what I love, the all-in price option. There's nothing worse than spending 30 minutes searching for tickets just to check out and realize the actual price is nowhere near what the listed price is. But with Game Time, you can just turn on all-in prices from the get-go, and you actually know what you'll be spending at checkout. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem that code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's get back to T'Vondre Sweat and a potential addition to this defensive line, which I think if the Browns drafted Sweat or almost anyone else in round 2, they probably wouldn't have that big of a role in 2024. I mean, think about Ika last year. He was a third-round pick, and, well, he hardly played at all until the final game against the Bengals in Week 18. But I think Sweat may have an easier path to the field than Ika did, because I'll get to it in a moment. First, let's talk about T'Vondre Sweat. He's 6'4", 366 pounds. We can kind of stop there for a moment and really let that simmer and sink in. 366 pounds. His player comp is Vita Vea. Vita Veas do not come around every single year in the draft. He was the nation's top interior offensive or defensive lineman, just the overall best interior lineman in college football last year. And usually those types of players are great against the run, but they don't have a ton of endurance, so they can't play all 3 downs, or they can't play 2 downs late in the game, or they offer 0 pass rush upside. But in Sweat's case, he is capable of getting after the quarterback. We saw that in the pressures and the sacks and the tackles for loss and whatnot he had in 2023. And he does play more than just first or second down. Like, he's got some good endurance, but it can definitely improve, and that's something that I think NFL coaches will really work on. But I think T'Vondre Sweat is what I'm really building up to here, is who Cleveland wants Siaka Ika to become, right? The Browns took Ika from Baylor last year not to get after the quarterback, but to be a tree stump in the middle of the defensive line, be an unmovable object that offensive linemen could not get around and reach the linebackers. And while Ika may become that still, we definitely didn't see that last year. So if Jim Schwartz and the rest of this Browns defensive coaching staff came out of 2023 going, Andrew, I'm sorry, dude, but we don't think Ika's got the endurance and the overall skill set to be anyone more than just a huge body in the middle of the defensive line that sure may not move a ton, but he's not going to provide a lot of upside for us, then maybe the Browns decide, let's go get T'Vondre Sweat. He's also a massive human being. When you look at the Browns' defensive tackles, they only have one true rotating member of their defensive line over 300 pounds. That's Dalvin Tomlinson. And think about how good Dalvin Tomlinson is against the run. Now imagine Dalvin Tomlinson with 40 more pounds. That's T'Vondre Sweat, right? We thought Ika were as big as they come. Sweat's 30 pounds bigger. So there is definitely some endurance work to be done. I think he's pretty advanced for a guy who's 366 pounds, but he's definitely not a finished product. But he would bring a new flair to this defensive line that you don't really have in Hurst and Harris and Jefferson. These are sub 300-pound defensive tackles, and I'm saying this out loud and thinking to myself as if that's not massive anyway, but there's a difference between 290 and 366 when you're an offensive lineman. It's a lot harder to push back a 366-pound guy and get to the second level for your block. So if the Browns really want to bring in a true run-stop, nose tackle, old-style kind of player, T'Vondre Sweat's your guy. Moving on to the third player in the pre-draft visit that cracks my top three, I'm going to go with offensive guard Javion Cohen. And it's not because I think he's one of the three best, but I think he's a good player at a sneaky potential position of need for Cleveland. And we've talked about the interior of the offensive line before, so I'm not shocked that the Browns are bringing in an offensive guard like Cohen for a visit. He's 6'4", 324 pounds. So, I like to do my draft breakdowns with a nice compliment sandwich, pro, con, pro. Well, my pro and my con for Cohen are both the same. He's a thick boy. He's 324 pounds. That's a large human being. That's going to engulf defensive linemen that are 280, 290 pounds. The con is he may be a little bit too big for his position, right? You think about what the Browns offensively want out of their guards. Joel Petonio and Wyatt Teller are always on the move. They are always pulling. They are always getting to the second level. Cohen is not at 324 pounds going to move that gracefully. And that's going to be a problem for him in the NFL. So I wouldn't be surprised if a team brings him in, basically has him redshirt his rookie season, get to their desired weight and endurance and fitness, and then maybe have a bigger role for him in 2025, which actually is kind of perfect timing for the Browns because they don't need an offensive guard for this year. They've got two starting guards that are all Pro Bowl caliber players. But something that we've highlighted before on the channel, and I know, I'm just beating a dead horse here, there's a good chance the Browns move on from one of these two players if they find themselves in a salary cap crunch and they can't afford a $22 million left or right guard. So they draft a guy this year to have him ready to start next year. Because when you look at the Browns' offensive line, they don't really need a ton of help for 2024. They did bring in a couple of offensive tackles on their pre-draft visits, which does make me wonder if they do not see a long-term with Jed Wills or Conklin beyond 2024, and their plan is to draft a tackle this year, have him and DeJuan Jones maybe sit for 2024, and then those two guys start in 2025. So that's definitely a possibility for the Browns at pick 54. I personally think guard is more of a day 3 pick for the Browns. When you're the last team to pick in the draft and you see how tough and competitive the AFC is, you may not find a true impact player at 54 for 2024, but you might as well make a better effort than going for an offensive guard that you really know, barring an injury to Petonio or Teller, won't play a single snap, right? Whereas a linebacker could find a way into the rotation. A wide receiver could find some balls thrown his way. So I think guard is much more of a day 3 plan for the Browns. Now, to wrap up the show, I just want to share with you guys some of the players the Browns met with during the Combine, just to give you a bigger and broader picture of who they are looking at and whatnot. Wide receiver Xavier Worthy from Texas. I'd be very surprised if he was available at 54. I'm actually just going to say it right now. He won't be available at 54. So that would require a trade. Houston offensive tackle Patrick Paul. Oregon quarterback, Bo Nix. Well, the Browns drafted DTR a little bit out of the blue last year, so maybe they just want to see what Bo Nix looks like. Penn State defensive end, Adisa Isaac. Notre Dame running back, Audric Estime. Florida State defensive tackle, Braden Fiske. And then Oregon wide receiver, Troy Franklin. Of those 7 players right there, I think the one that's maybe got the best chance of coming to the Browns, if it's not Troy Franklin, I would say maybe running back Audric Estime. So he had an awful combine, just to rip the Band-Aid off here. And 1,300 yards, 6.4 yards a carry, 18 total touchdowns last year for the Fighting Irish. Those were all really good stats. But Audric Estime at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis this year, I mean, his 40-yard dash, it definitely bumped him down a round or 2. I mean, unfortunately for him, he ran a 4, and I kid you not, 7.140. And listen, I try not to read too much into the measurements to deem whether a player is going to be good or bad in the NFL, but there are some positions that I just can't get past. If you're a running back and you don't have at least average speed, I struggle to find a way you'll be successful in the NFL, right? If you're a quarterback and you don't have great speed, I don't really give a damn. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning did a hell of a job in their careers without having great speed. If you're a wide receiver without great measurements, we've seen a lot of wide receivers be successful in the league in a variety of packages. So I can buy into not just crossing guys off because they don't run a certain 40-yard dash time, right? DeAndre Hopkins wasn't the fastest dude coming out, and he's done pretty well for himself. If you're a cornerback and you're slow, I don't see a way you're going to make it. Like, cornerback is just such a reactionary position that no matter how intelligent you are, there is a line in the sand where you have to be able just to run with the wide receivers. So I think for running back, if you don't have average speed, I really struggle to see a way you're going to catch on in the league. Now, one other player that the Browns met with that I just want to show some love to, it's my guy Joe Milton. As a proud Tennessee grad, Joe Milton has some mixed reviews coming into this year's draft, and I'm just going to take the next 30 seconds to plant my flag and say Joe Milton is going to have an NFL career. I don't know how successful that will be, but I think he's going to light it up in the preseason. He's got the best arm we have seen enter the draft in a few years, maybe since Josh Allen, actually. I think he's a better arm than Zach Wilson coming out of BYU. Unfortunately, the accuracy concerns are legitimate, but I'll say as someone that watched every single snap of Tennessee football last year, he had god-awful wide receivers to work with, right? Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, they went to the pros, and Joe Milton was left with throwing to scrubs. So I think Milton, with real NFL talent around him, has a chance to be successful in the league as a backup. And some of the Browns maybe are looking at because he's got some incredible horse traits abilities, like throwing an orange 100 yards across a field. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Producer Cullen Brown with me today. Which card do you want to go with, Cullen?
Okay, so I'm a big fan of Malachi Corley.
Yeah, I've been hyping him up. If he does not work out, I'm in trouble.
Now, you said Yak Monster. I don't know if it's Yak Monster, Yak King. He's got a lot of Yak nicknames.
Yeah.
So it could be any of them. But where's the number 11? The 11th card in the deck is a Jack. He's a Jack of all trades.
Oh,
so it makes sense.
This is good.
So I'm going to go with a Jack of Spades.
I really like that a lot. You got to hit. I don't even want to get it. I want you to get it. I'm going to go with the 6 of diamonds for no good reason. Ready? 7 of diamonds. I'm sorry. I was pulling for you. The next one, by the way? No. All right. We're going to sign off. We'll catch up with everyone later. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go Brownies.